are. Okay, we are holding Daf Lamed Vav. We're going to start from Daf Lamed Hey, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom by the words Tanan. Okay, Tanan. Now, just very quickly, the picture is like this. The Mishnah said, here's the picture on the screen. If you have fruits on your roof, right, on Yontif, and it started to rain, and so the Mishnah says, only on Yontif you're allowed to do this, that if you want to save the fruits from the rain, you're allowed to go and kick the fruits or push the fruits down a skylight into your house to protect them from the rain, but you're not permitted to lift the fruits up into a window and put it into the house that way. Lifting the fruits up is too much of a bother, and you're not allowed to do excessive work on Yom Tiv, so you have to take the loss. If you don't have a skylight, I guess you have to take the loss. But if you have a skylight, you can push the fruits down the skylight into your house to protect them. That's what the
Can you push it with your hands, or do you have to kick it?
I mean, you could lift it because it's a small lift to the skylight.
Oh, so you can use your hands.
It seems that you could use your hand. I mean,
because I was thinking of, and maybe the whole idea was that it's a little bit of a shinoi by kicking it as opposed to picking it up and putting it through the window.
So what I thought to myself, based on the way these people drew the picture, is that since technically you could kick it, so more often you're going to be kicking the apples down the thing. So if you lift it, that's okay. But to get it through a window, you only have to lift it. So that's why it's not permitted. And again, this is only Yom Tiv, not Shabbos. So what the Gemara says over here, so the Gemara says that we're going to find in Masechta Shabbos, you're allowed to move heavy packages, heavy boxes of fruit and straw for a certain reason. Listen to this. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Mashilim Peres Derech Aruba. You're allowed to put the fruits down the Aruba okay. Yes, I'm sorry. Mashilim Peres Derech Aruba Der B'Yantiv. Ad Kama. So Amar Abzeira, Amar Basi, Amar La, Amar Basi, Amar Yochanan. In other words, how much fruits can you push down that skylight? Can you push endless amounts of fruit? So we find something similar. If you have a room, right, in your house, okay, your dining room, and you have a bunch of big crates of straw there, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of guests. So now you have to remove the crates of straw or produce. So the Mishnah says in Masechta Shabbos, Mifanin, you're allowed to pick up and remove arba v'chamesh kupei shel tevin, 4 or 5 crates of straw v'shel tfuah produce, mipnei orchim, because you have guests, or mipnei bitul beis medrash. If it's a shul or a beis medrash where people are coming to learn and there's not enough place to sit, you're allowed to move only 4 or 5 boxes, crates, but not more than that. So same idea is probably only 4 or 5, crates worth of fruit you're allowed to push down the skylight on Yom Tiv from the roof, because it's similar idea. So the Gemara challenges the comparison. Vidilma, maybe it's different. Shana Hasam, over there it's different. They allowed you to carry 4 or 5 crates of fruit, which is a lot. I mean, I don't know how many pounds is this, hundreds of pounds, because there it's different. The Ika on the case in Shabbos is the Ika Beetle Beis Medrash. There's a disruption in Beis Medrash, because if you're not going to remove it, people are not going to have a place to sit and they won't learn. So therefore, they allowed you to do more. But in our case, a personal house, the Lake of Beetle Beis Medrash, we're not talking about somebody, if he doesn't do it, he's not going to learn Torah. So maybe they won't permit you to do so much. They will only permit you to do 10 pounds worth of fruit, but not so much of 4 or 5 cratefuls. Inami, or another reason why Shabbos you can do more than Yom Tiv. Hosam Hainu Tama, the Arba Chupas Shari. The reason why Shabbos is more lenient, Mishum Shabbos the Chamire also with Zilzulebe. Shabbos is more strict, and people are never going to degrade Shabbos if they allow you to work so hard for an exceptional case of allowing more people to come into the shul. Aval Yom Tiv, the kill v'asal zuzalebe. Yom Tiv is always lighter because you're allowed to cook on Yom Tiv. So if you allow people to do excessive work on Yom Tiv, they're going to start degrading other halachas of Yom Tiv. So therefore, klal kalod, we don't go with that, but maybe you have to do less. On Yom Tov, they only allowed you to do less, not as much as you can do on Shabbos. Or let's do it the other way. Maybe Shabbos you can do only 4 or 5 crates, but in Yom Tov you could do more because Hasam Hainatama over there they allowed you 4 or 5 crates and not more. The lake have some money because there's no loss of money. But in our case, the Ika have some money. The guy's going to lose his money because he's going to lose the value of his fruits. So afilu tuvanami, I might think that you're allowed to remove as much fruit as on the roof. There's no limit. So the Gemara doesn't answer that question. Now the Gemara just goes on a bunch of questions, and the Gemara is going to end up, we're never going to answer these questions. Hasam Tanan, another case by Shabbos. By Shabbos, there's an exception. Let's say the shul is in a storage. It doubles over, not only as a base medrash, as a library learning, but it's also where you store fruit, where you're a storage house. Avaloi as oitzer. You can't clear off the oitzer. What does that mean? Al mashmuel avaloi as oitzer. My avaloi. So what does that mean? Avaloi yigmar as oitzer kuloi. You can't totally empty out the storage house. In other words, even if you have a lot of people coming to learn into this storage house, they didn't have a shul or anything like that. They made up their learning in this storage house, and you want to remove the crates. You could only remove 4 or 5, but make sure there's other crates left over, because if you clear out all the crates, right? If 4 or 5 is just what's left over, then all of a sudden you're going to see a nice floor. You're going to maybe those floors had holes in them. They were like we learned before, they were dirt floors, and you might come to fill in the gap, fill in the holes on Shabbos. And it is. So make sure, don't completely clear out the storage house. Dilma asil ashvoya gumis. Maybe you're going to come to smooth out the holes in the ground. So therefore, leave some crates there. So that was the din by Shabbos. Hachamai, what would be the case by Yom Tov? Hasubhu b'Shabbos to asur mishum dechamir. Shabbos, of course, you're more strict because Shabbos, you're over Shabbos, you get skila. Al Yom Tov the kill. Yom Tov is always lighter. Shapi dami, you can clear out the entire roof. In other words, can you clear out the entire roof? Maybe you have to leave some over because maybe you're going to see a little gap in your roof, a little hole in your roof. You're going to want to fill it up. So the Gemara says, no, by Shabbos, we were more strict, but maybe by Yom Tov, which is always a lighter mitzvah, you could clear off your whole roof full of fruits. Or Dilma, maybe not. Hasam over there, the Ika Beetle based Medrash, Amrit Loy. Madach over there, like a Kal Vachomer. By Shabbos, where there's Bittul based Medrash, where people are not going to learn, we say, no, you can't clear out the whole storage house. You have to leave some crates there, even though some people are not going to end up learning because there's not going to be enough room. You still can't do it. So Hacha over here, the lake of Beetle based Medrash, by clearing off your roof, there's no interruption of learning. Certainly, like Kolshken, you can't clear off your entire roof. So the question is, can you clear off the entire roof or not? And the Gemara leaves it. Another question regarding our Mishnah. Our Mishnah teaches you, okay, Mashila Paris Derech Aruba B'Yantiv. You're allowed to put the fruits down the skylight on Yantiv. V'Amar Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman said, Loi Shanu Ela B'Oisai Hagag. This was not taught only by that roof. Only the roof where the fruits are, you can bring it down the skylight. But let's say there is no skylight on your roof. Let's say, in this case, the skylight is on the neighbor's roof, right? If it's on the neighbor's roof, can I move the fruits over there and throw it down the neighbor's roof? So Rabbi Nachman said, Loy shal ba'isagag, aval migag legag loy. You can't move it to somebody else's roof and then put it down his skylight. You can't carry the fruits from one roof to the other. Even if both roofs are both the same, so you're just kicking it from one roof to the other roof, just to get closer to his skylight because you don't have one, you still can't do it. So that's the din by Yom Tiv. Now the question is, Hasamai, by Shabbos. By Shabbos, when you want to clear out, can you clear it out to somebody else's? Can you clear it out to somebody else's room? If you don't have it, okay. So the Gemara says The kill. Over here, it's lighter because you're going to degrade yontiv, so they didn't allow you to go from roof to roof. Avo Shabbos the chamiroi v'loy also l'zizei shapedami. So Shabbos is strict already. You're not going to become to degrade it. So you could actually go from chotzer to chotzer, not to clear it out. You just move it from one room to another room. That's fine. Dilma, no. You can have some pairs, just like over here. If there's a loss of fruit. Amrit law, you say you can't move it from one roof to another roof. Hasam the lake have some pairs over there. There's no loss of fruits. Like Kolshkein, certainly you can't move it from one area, one room in your house to another room in your house. So the Gemara does not resolve that. One more question. Hacha Tanan, in our Mishnah, Tanya, we learned in a Brisa on our Mishnah that you can't put it through a window. Lo yishalshlim b'cheva b'chaloinis v'lo yidvidem derech sulamos. You can't put it through a window, and you can't put it through, take it down the steps. So hasamai, what would be the case in Shabbos? Can I do something similar? Something similar of, not putting it in boxes, but carrying it in sacks and bringing it down. Hacha b'yantiv huda asa and yantiv. It's also the lake of bitul beis medrash. There's no loss in beis medrash. Aval Shabbos the ika bitul beis medrash. There is a interruption of learning. Shapedami, it would be correct. Dilma, maybe hacha the ika hefse peris. There's a loss of fruits. Amrit, you tell me, lo, you can't do it. Hasam the lake hefse peris, but over there's no loss of peris. Loy kolshkein, certainly you can do it. So Teku, the Gemara remains a question on all these questions. In other words, do you always compare what halacha that you find by Shabbos to Yontif, and a halacha that you find by Yontif, do you say that it applies to Shabbos? And the Gemara goes back and forth and does not resolve that question. Okay, let's go on to the next Gemara. In the Mishnah, it said, if you have a leak in your house, here's the picture of a leak, and you have fruits in your house, the Mishnah said you're allowed to bring a towel or a big sheet to cover the fruits from the rain, from the leak in your house. That's what the Mishnah said. But fruits are something you can eat. Fruits are something not muktzah items. So Amma Ula, the Gemara says Amma Ula. This is an important machlokes. Amma Ula, Rab Ula said, Va'afila avera delivni. Even if you have regular building bricks in your house, let's say you're in the construction field and you have bricks in your house that you're going to use in a construction project, and it started leaking into your house. You're allowed to bring a towel or a sheet to cover those bricks. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is that those bricks are muktzah. So you're actually bringing a non-muktzah item for use for a muktzah item. So it's almost like so Ula says that's permitted. That is permitted to be done. But Rabbi Yitzchak says no. Only peris haru'uyin, only edible fruits that you could eat. That's the one you can bring a towel to cover it or sheet to cover it. But bricks, you're actually taking a non-muktzah item such as a towel or sheet and covering bricks, which is a muktzah item. Rabbi Yitzchak goes with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda that that's muktzah, that's set aside, and you're not allowed to, anything that's considered muktzah, you're not allowed to take a non-muktzah item and use it for a muktzah item. Okay, so therefore Rabbi Yitzchak is strict and says you can't use the sheet to cover bricks, only fruits. But as the Rabbi Yitzchak aligns himself with his opinion. The Rabbi Yitzchak ain't kli nitol ela dova hanitol b'Shabbos. You can't use kli. A kli is, let's say, clothing or a towel or a sheet. You can't use it only for something that can be moved on Shabbos. You could only use it for the benefit of fruits, but not for the benefit of bricks, which is bricks that are not used on Shabbos. That cannot be done. So now we can bring some proofs from our Mishnah. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, mechasin es aperes bekelim. You cover the fruits with the Mishnah says you cover those fruits with towels. So the Mishnah uses the examples of fruits. Get it? Peres and only fruits you can cover with a towel. Avira de livne, no, you can't cover the bricks with the towel. So because towel is the bricks are muktzah. So our Mishnah seems to prove, like Rabbi Yitzchak, that you wouldn't be able to use it for bricks. So the Gemara says, no, huadin, our Mishnah could also have used the example, nafila avera delivni, that you're allowed to use it for bricks as well. But I did the Tana Reisha, Mashil and Paris, Tana Sefer Nama Machasan as Paris. Since the first example that the Mishnah used in the Mishnah is the first case of the Mishnah is fruits being thrown down the skylight. So the second Mishnah, the case is fruits in your house, and you're bringing a towel to cover it. But the halacha would be the same if it was bricks, muktzah items. You still would be allowed to cover it. That's what so it's not such a proof from our Mishnah. Okay, so let's say Tnan. Let's give the second cases of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says v'chein kadei yain v'kadei shemen. The second case of the Mishnah says that if you have jugs of oil or jugs of wine, and it's leaking into your house, you're allowed to cover the jugs of oil and the jugs of wine. So it's giving another case of jugs. So the question is, so here you can't say that this is the first time it uses jugs as an example. So the Gemara just says, so it must be proofs that only jugs of wine and oil, which are edible items and usable items on Shabbos, you're allowed to cover them. But bricks, you would not be allowed to cover them. So this second part of the Mishnah is a question against Rabbi Yitzchak. So the Gemara says, no. Our Mishnah is talking about betivla, that these oil and this wine was tevel, non-edible. It's not edible because no trumas and maasros was taken off of it. So it's like bricks. You can't use them. That's the case of our Mishnah. And the Mishnah says, hachinami mistavra. And that makes logical sense. The isal kadaitach kadeyayim v'kadeshem and the hetera. If we're talking about barrels of jugs of wine and oil that you could heter that you could eat, so why list off another example? Hatanile reisha peris. That is the first example of fruits. So why list off another example of oil and wine if they're both edible items? So that's why it must be that the second case of the Mishnah is talking about an unedible item, because the jugs of wine and the jugs of oil are tevel. So that must be a proof the way Rabbi Yitzchak learned the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Could be the jugs of oil and the jugs of wine are edible, and you could eat them. But you still need to give me this next example in the Mishnah, because kadei yain and kadei shemen, it's trichale. I needed to tell me that you're allowed to cover it, because sal kadaitech amina, I would have thought only if there's lehefse meruba. If you're going to have a great loss, like if it rains on fruits on the roof, then you're going to lose all the fruits. So that's a great loss. Chashashu. Then they allowed you to work and do something to save yourself. Lehefse muad. But for a small loss, maybe the Chazal were not calm and were not concerned, because at the end of the day, it's raining onto these jugs, so most of them are going to be okay even after the rain leak into your house. I might think you're not allowed to cover it. Kamash malam. That's what the chiddush of the Mishnah is. So basically, our Mishnah is no proof either way. So we still have the machlokes between Ula and Rabbi Yitzchak. Can I use a sheet to cover bricks? To now we learned in the Mishnah. Noisnin kli tachas adela b'Shabbos. Another example the Mishnah says that if it's leaking into your house, you're allowed to put a bucket to catch the leak. Now, the Gemara assumes that this is like sewer water. It's unedible water. And nevertheless, you're allowed to bring a non-muktzah item, an empty bucket, to catch the muktzah item of this unusable water. So that's a good proof that you're allowed, like Rabbi Yitzchak. You're allowed to use not like Rabbi Yitzchak, that it's a proof to Ula that you could use something to cover the bricks. So now we learned in the Mishnah, kli tachas adelef b'Shabbos. So the Gemara says, b'delef hara'u, that we're talking about drops of water that are drinkable to an animal, right? So it's really edible drops of water. So you're not bringing something for a muktzah item. Tashema, I'll bring you a brisa. Parson machatzelis, a lot of spread a mat. Al gabe levenim. Here it's straightforward. You're allowed to take a mat that you use, and put it onto bricks b'Shabbos. That's the brisa. So it's a clear proof that you're allowed to do it, like Ula said. So the Gemara says, no, those bricks are not bricks that you're going to use in a construction project. Those bricks that the Bryce is talking about, the yatur mibinyana, that were left over from a building project. And the chazi lemizge alay, they're not muktzah because you could technically lean on them, sit on them. So therefore, they're non-muktzah items. That's what the Bryce is talking about. If they were real muktzah items, you would not be allowed to bring the mat to cover the bricks. Tashema, come in here. You're allowed to take a mat and put it on stones on Shabbos. Now, stones are muktzah. I mean, stones, what use do stones have? And yet you can bring a mat, a non-muktzah item, for use, for the benefit of stones, which are a muktzah item. How do you answer that? So the Gemara says, no, those stones that the Brisa says that you're covering are useful stones, stones that are non-muktzah. What are non-muktzah stones? They're round stones that you use to the chazi and the beis hakisei. They used to wipe themselves in the beis hakisei with those stones. So they were bathroom stones. So therefore, they're not muktzah. That's why the Brisa says you could use a mat to cover them. Another case, interesting case, Toshima. Parsin machatzeles al gabe kiveres devarim b'Shabbos. One is allowed to put let's say, here's a honeycomb, right? Here's a honeycomb. I don't know if you ever saw one right here. So you're allowed to put a mat to cover the honeycombs on Shabbos, on Shabbos, right? Now, bechama, why would you put a mat to cover the honeycomb, the beehive? Because bechama to protect, if it's sunny, if it's summertime, you want to protect it from the sun. If it's wintertime, you want to protect the bees from the rain. But you make sure that don't try to, you're not thinking about trapping the bees, because by you putting the mat, by definitions, the bee can't fly away. So therefore, have no intention to capture the bees. So this clearly says that you're putting a cover over the beehive. Now, what's in a beehive? Unedible food. And you're allowed to take the machzelas, a mat, for use of a beehive, which is muktzah on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, no, this beehive is non-muktzah on Shabbos. Why? Because there's honey in that beehive. So the Gemara says, okay, you want to say there's honey in the beehive, but honey is in the beehive is only in the summertime, not in the wintertime. That makes sense in the summertime because there's honey in the beehive. But in the wintertime, what are you going to say? Of course, there's in the wintertime, there is no honey in the beehive, and yet you can put a mat on top of that beehive. So the answer is there is something in the beehive that's there, that's food. Those two honeycombs that are in the beehive, there are two honeycombs in the beehive, which is stored food for the bees to use during the winter. And therefore, there is bee food, so to speak, in that beehive. So the Gemara says, but if it's bee food, it's not human food, so it's muktzah. They are muktzah. So you can't eat that. That's bee food. So it's beeswax or beef pollen or whatever it is. It's not human food. And for the Gemara, that a human said, I'm going to eat from that. He decided because, that is a very healthy food, and he's going to eat it along with the bees. So therefore, it's human food. And therefore, that's why the Mishnah says, the Brisa says you could put a mat on top of this beehive, even in the winter, when there is no honey there. But if there's a honeycomb in there that has some edible bee food, but humans can eat it too, then you're allowed to put the mat there because it's not totally muksa. So now the Gemara says, if you would not think to use those honeycombs as human food, right? What would you say? Usr. It would be usr to eat that. It would be usr to eat that. You would not allow to put the mat on top of the beehive because there's no edible human food there. So Aditani, why does the Brisa say, have no intention to trap? That's the only problem you will have. That's the only problem you will have with putting a mat on top of a beehive. The Brisa should tell you something more important. Lifleg, let the Brisa differentiate in the case itself. and should say, when do I say you're allowed to put a mat on a beehive? If you intended to eat the food in the beehive, you want to use it as human food. But if you don't have no intention to use bee food as human food, asur, it should be asur. So why does the Brisa say it's the same? Why does the Brisa not make that differentiation? So the Gemara says, Hachi Kamar. That's exactly what the Brisa is saying. Even if you made it as human food, and so everything you dotted your T's and you dotted your I's and crossed your T's, but make sure, in addition to that, don't have intention to trap, because by covering it and thinking that I want to trap these bees, you're going to be over an avera. So now the Gemara says, "B'mai akimta." What forced you to say such a strange case that there's honeycombs in this beehive? It's wintertime. It's really bee food, but you're thinking to make it human food because you want to say to make sure Rabbi Yitzchak is okay, because Rabbi Yitzchak holds like Rabbi Yehuda that something that's a muktzah item, you're not allowed to use a non-muktzah item for the benefit of a muktzah item. Rabbi Yehuda, the Islay muktzah. You want to say that the whole brisa goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds a muktzah. Ema seifa. According to the end of the brisa, uvavach lo yiskaven lotzev. Make sure, don't have intention to have tzeda, to trap. That part, asin Rab Shimon. That must be only Rab Shimon would be that lenient, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, even if you have no intention to trap, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to cover it on Shabbos, because Rabbi Yehuda is strict. Dava she'eina miskaven is asur. The Amar, because the only Rab Shimon holds Dava she'eina miskaven is mutter. So the beginning of that brisa goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, and the end of that brisa will go according to Rab Shimon. That would not make sense. And so the Gemara asks back, oh, so you want to say the end of the brisa goes according to Rab Shimon? That either doesn't make sense. But Tizbara, your assumption makes sense to Rab Shimon, that the end of the brisa goes according to Rab Shimon. Does that make sense? Abai and Barah both agree. Rab Shimon would agree that if it's a guarantee to happen, certainly there is no permission to do it. When did Rab Shimon say that your Dava Sheina Miskaven is mutter? Is only, let's say you're dragging a chair on the front lawn. You don't know if you're going to make a ditch or not. You don't know if you're going to make a charisha or not. But if it's guaranteed to happen, even Rab Shimon would hold that it's also. When you put a mat on top of a beehive, certainly you're going to trap bees. So how does this whole thing make sense to you? So you have to start explaining this brisa. The whole brisa goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. And here we're talking about the ispe kave. There are some windows on the side of the beehive where the bees could escape. So you're putting the mat on top, but there's still little holes. Don't say according to Rabbi Yehuda, don't have intention to Seder, because you're not doing Seder. You're just putting the mat on top, but there are side windows where the bees can escape. We go to Lamed Vav Mabez. Ela Ema say uvach lo yasenu mitzuda. Don't cover it too much where you're going to actually make it a trapping. You're going to trap. If you draw down the mat off to the sides and cover the windows, then you'll be trapping the bees. So the Gemara asks, if that's what the Bryce is trying to tell you, Peshita, that's simple. Of course, you're not allowed to cover the windows where there is no escape for the bees. So the Gemara says, I might think there's no problem with trapping bees. Mahu desema b'minoi nitzad asar. Only trapping like live animals, like a bird or a wild animal, a deer or a sheep. That's called trapping. But trapping an insect, which normally people don't trap insects, I might think it's mutter. That's permitted to be done on Shabbos. Kamash Malam, that's what the Bryce is saying, that even with bees, you have the issa of trapping, even though most people don't trap bees. But if you trap a bee on Shabbos, you would be chayiv. So what brought us into this whole discussion is because we had a question, how do you interpret this brisa that says right over here that you're allowed to put the mat in the summertime because of the sun and the wintertime because of the rain. And the question was, how do you have food inside the beehive in the wintertime? So that's how it brought us into this whole thing that there are honeycombs and you made it human food. Rav Ashi says you don't have to go so far. Does the Brisa say that we're talking about summertime or wintertime? It's just you're covering it. You're covering the beehive in this when it's sunny outside because of the sun. And you're covering it when it's raining outside because of the rain. But really, it's not summertime or wintertime. When is the Brisa case talking about? In the springtime or in the fall. And the springtime and fall, the Ikechama, there are sunny days, the Ikechama, the winter days, but both in Nisan time and in Tishrei time, Ikedavash, there's always edible honey in there. Interesting. Honey is a very interesting food. It's the only food that can never spoil. So much bacteria and so much health in there. Anyway.
Never ever spoil?
Honey never spoils.
It doesn't spoil. It can get crystallized, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Never
spoil.
spoils, and it's antibacteria. So and it's and the pollen also is very healthy.
Why can't you catch a bee on Shabbos?
So it seems from the Gemara. It's a good question. It seems from the Gemara is that not only catching an animal, but trapping a bee is also any type of trapping, even if it's something that's not commonly trapped. You're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Others want to say that bees are a type of insect that people do trap. That's the chiddush of the Brisa. And trapping a fly would not be an isser. You see, what you draw from this Gemara is that trapping a bee is usser and probably trapping a fly would be usser. Or you can say the opposite. The chiddush of the Brisa is that a bee, people do tend to trap, and they raise bees in the companies that have these honeycombs and they raise bees, so they trap them. But a regular fly, there's no issa to put a cup on top of a wasp on Shabbos or an insect that's bothering you.
Can you kill it if it's bothering you?
No, you can't kill it, but you're allowed to put a cup on it, something like that. But we have to see the halacha, what the halacha is, to try to shoo it away. You're allowed to put a bucket under to catch the raindrops on Shabbos. Tana, we learned in the Brisa in this malei hakli, if the bucket filled up, shoifech v'shoina ve'eina nimra. If the bucket filled up with water, right? Say you don't have enough buckets, right? It's filling up with water. You're allowed to carry the bucket out and spill out and bring it back, right? You're allowed to do it ve'eina nimra. You don't have to stop. The Gemara tells a story like this: Bei Rechaya, the Abaya, the lift. Abaya had a room in his house where he had the millstones there, and it started raining into his house where he had the millstones. Now, millstones is an expensive item. It's like today's refrigerator. All right, that was their food item, kitchen item. Now it was raining into his house, and he didn't have enough buckets to clear out the rain. It was leaking so much. So also the Kami to Rabbah. He came to Rabbah with a question: can I lift up the millstones and move it? Now, millstones are also to move on Shabbos because they're muktzah, right? They're a klisha malachto leisser. So he came to Rabbah for a solution to his problem. Amalei, Rabbah said, Zil Ailu Purech Lahasam. Go bring your bed right next to where it's raining in the millstones. Now, when it rains on top of millstones, like there's a certain glue in the millstones that melt and it becomes a smelly item. Once the millstones become a smelly item, you're allowed to, there's no muktzah. Chazal said that if you have a bucket of excrement, you're allowed to move it on Shabbos. So there's no muktzah when it's something disgusting there. So put your bed there, and now your bed is next to something that smells. So now the millstones have a graf shel re'i. The millstone become like a bucket of excrement. And then you can move the millstones. I guess they weren't connected to the ground. You can move them. So that's what the solution the rabbi told him. But Yosef Abaya v'kokashale. Rabbi Abaya was questioning Rabbi's solution. Can I make a bucket of smelling of excrement lechatchila? I mean, my bed's not there, so I'm doing a trick, moving my bed there, and now I have a problem with something smelly. Adahachi, and while Abaya was contemplating the solution that Rabbah told him, Nafal be'rechaya dabaya, it totally fell apart. And there was no point in saving it. So he lost a lot of money. Amar, so Abaye said, tastily, I deserve it. The Aviri, the Amar, because I started double checking the rabbi. The rabbi gave me the heter, and I was trying to be more machmir and tried to say I should be more strict than what the rabbi told me. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said, Graf Sharei, a bucket of excrement, V'avit shel mei meragayim, or a bucket of urine. Mutter loitzin la'ashma, right? You're allowed to take it out to the garbage. But when you take it out to the garbage, now the bucket itself becomes a muktzah item because it was used for excrement or urine. Kshu machzire, when you want to bring it back to its original location, noisim boy mayim umachzire. Put regular water in there, so now it becomes a basis to regular water. So then you're allowed to carry the bucket back, the bucket back to where you want it. Sava minei. People thought Grav Share'eu agav mona in b'fnei atzmeloi. You're only allowed to carry a bucket of excrement because it's a bucket. You're not allowed to touch the excrement itself, but not the excrement itself that you're not allowed to do because that is ready to muktzah. They only allowed you to, they suspended muktzah if the excrement is in a bucket, then you can move it. So Tashma, come in here. There was a rat that was found in the, Ravashi was a spice maker, and he found a rat on Shabbos. I don't know, he was exterminated, didn't do a good job, or maybe he did do a good job. It was a dead rat there. So Amalu Ravashi said, he told his assistant or his kids, take it by the tail and get it out of my spices there. So we see that not only you're allowed to touch the bucket, but the excrement itself, obviously you're doing it with a glove, you're allowed to pick it up and move it itself. It was no Isra of Shabbos in that. All right, you know what? We'll stop over here by the Mishnah, and we'll catch up a little bit tomorrow. It's easier. It gets easier over here.
What kind of stone?
Yes.
What kind of stone is milkstone, you said?
Millstone, like that's how they grounded their wheat. That was like our toaster or whatever you want to call it, or grinder. It was a personal grinder. He grounded his wheat in his house, and it was raining in the kitchen where the millstones were, and,
right.
And then the glue started to come off, and it smelled. But if there continues to rain on it, it would lose the millstones.
You mentioned at one point that there was something that they use equivalent to our refrigerators. Did I misunderstand what you said?
No. That I meant the millstone. The millstone was an expensive item that they had in their kitchen, and it was leaking into the kitchen, and therefore, and he didn't have enough buckets to catch the leak. So if he lets it leak onto his millstones are going to go kaput. So he had to figure out, how could I move these millstones, which are usher to use on Shabbos? How am I allowed to move them? So a rabbi told him, just bring your bed next to the millstones, and now you have a smelly item next to your bed. You're allowed to move the smelly item, the millstone.
I understand all that. I misunderstood one point. You said something equivalent to our today refrigerator. Right.
I meant to say it's an expensive
it just
appliance.
Means with cost, just the cost. Equivalent of cost.
Right. Like cost, the loss, the let's say you spend $2,000 on a refrigerator, he had a $2,000 millstone.
It would be a major loss. That's all he means.
Right.
I see. I got you.
Not an equivalent appliance.
Right.
So it's okay. Right. Very good.
Well, you learn never to question the rabbi, because he questioned the rabbi, he lost the whole millstone.
I got it.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. You get the heter, you move.
That's right.
Okay. Very good, everyone.
Might anyone know about Kore?
What?
Might anyone know about Kore that can lay this Shabbos at an outdoor tent minion by Shalom, 9:00?
I will send out a WhatsApp to another group, to somebody, maybe somebody will show up.
Well, maybe you can give them my phone number and they can reach out to me and let me know if they're.
Yes.
Yeah, you look for somebody who lanes in a hashkama minion.
No, it's a 9:00 minion. This is a 9:00.
Yes, but sometimes they lane in hashkama,
right.
And they're available for the later one. So
I'll send it to the Heichel David WhatsApp and the other groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta know by tomorrow evening. That's why I was just mentioning it. You can put my number.
Yes, I'm gonna put your number on it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, good night to everybody.
Good night. Bye.